Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we've got a really special show for you today. We got filmmaker Paul Wittenberger on, and if you have not seen his first installment of Covidland entitled The Lockdown, what are you waiting for? We've done a review on this channel. We actually watched the premiere over at Infowars.com and banned video, and this film is powerful, and really only the beginning of a series that I believe is going to shed more and more truth and light on the darkness we are currently living under via COVID-19 84. And joining us, of course, is that filmmaker, Paul Wittenberger. Before we get started, Paul, let my audience know who you are, how you got started in all this, because this is far from your first film. What is it that made you want to get into not only documentary filmmaking, but documentary filmmaking that was challenging some of the largest media and mainstream narratives we've ever seen in our lifetime, long before this pandemic?
Well, I appreciate that, Jason. This is like you said, is nothing new. This is my 10th film that I've made. I started off back in 2009, where we made What in the World Are They Spraying with G. Edward Griffin. And then I went on to produce a couple other films with him, Fluoride Poison on Tap, The Great Calling. And so this is just another film that really just exposes the New World Order.
And, you know, a lot of people don't like using that term, but right now, with so many billionaires and their minions in the predator class, both in the mainstream media and in politics, using the buzz terms, build back better, and we need a great reset. There can be no doubt that this is what this is. It is repackaged, quote unquote, New World Order propaganda. They still use that term every once in a while. Australia? Huh? We're now living in it. And they're unabashed when they use that term. And now it's gotten so Orwellian and far, they sick their fact checkers on you when terms like that are used. And then underneath they say it's missing context. Let's talk about that for a second. Going into this, you knew you were living in a period where there had never been more widespread and immediate censorship in the Western world. Yet you pushed forward, and I think you did something like 30 plus interviews across the country on all sorts of experts, and not only managed to put this film out, and hopefully the whole series comes out, obviously, but do so in an A+ grade manner. It looks incredible. It sounds incredible. It's edited incredibly. What drove you to do that?
Well, I appreciate that, Jason. Just for the audience, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, this is the name of the film is called Covidland. We broke it up into 5 different parts. The first part is the lockdown. That part is out and now available to the public. You can get the DVD on Infowars. And then we have part 2, which is being completed here within the next day or two. And so that will go off to make the DVDs. It's called The Mask. And then part 3 is called The Shot, part 4, The Propaganda, and part 5 is The Great Reset. So, you know, we really go through all these different parts. I know we interviewed you. Man, that was a while ago.
It flew by, right? Like that was way back in what? It's got to be April, maybe? Was it April?
Yeah, I think so. So, and you're going to be featured in episodes 4 and 5. So we're going to have to wait a little bit to see you in it, but that when I first went to interview you, this was originally only going to be just a feature-length film, and so I just focused the questions basically on the Great Reset, kind of the end game, and so that's kind of why the part 4 and 5 get into that aspect.
Well, you have so many interviews, and I think that you did a really good job of not oversaturating it, because I know there are, you know, I've seen a lot of the faces that you've been in there with trying to get everybody in every chapter. I think it's highly effective the way that you did this. And as I told my audience, man, when you get to the end of that film, and it was so hard for me to watch that woman who had been married to this guy for 75 years with her granddaughter sitting there, and having my own personal experiences with family and the restrictions back in New York. One of the reasons you came out to Iowa, I moved across. it just really hit me hard on top of so many other things. You did a great job of integrating news footage into that. I mean, this is an A-plus production. You came into my little house, okay? I got 2 floors and maybe like a 7-8 foot clearance with that crane. Tell people about the gear and equipment that you set out to do this before you had a deal with Alex Jones. Like you said, before you knew this was going to be a series, when you just said, hey, I got to make a documentary about what's going on right now despite the censorship, you came in guns a-blazing, full gear, everything you could imagine.
Well, I had to leave half of my gear out in the car, man. I couldn't even bring it all into your house because there was just no room for it. But yeah, I mean, people don't realize the effort that goes into these films. I don't just set up like 1 light or 2 lights and just call it a day. You know, I try to, I think, you know, on average, it's like 8 to 10 lights at least, plus, you know, you got diffusion and, you know, flags and all that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, you were I think the second interview we did in the film. Mm-hmm. And so I probably had the least amount of equipment for your interview. And then I by the end of it, because we did 50 interviews for this film, I had way more gear going.
I mean, you had the smoke machine in the background, brother. You know, and I have for those that have watched the broadcast when I'm not just in this studio, but I have like this little mini studio in my living room. So I'm sitting in front of it. Like I said, it's cluttered. You know what I mean? It's got like a little runway. I believe we had to open up my bedroom door in the back just so the crane back could get in there. But it's just a testament, man. You also brought your family on the road too. It's not like they stayed home and dad just went to work. I mean, you really lived this with your family as you were doing it. Tell us about that experience.
Well, I wanted to, you know, it's tough when you make these films because you're kind of like you're kind of like in a cave for a year or so for every film. And so I try to bring my family with me. I have 5 kids, and you know, wife, and I try to bring them with me wherever I can. And I was like, you want to go down to Iowa? And so they were all about it. So that was a nice trip. We got to hang out, do a few things for fun. And so, yeah, it was nice.
So you put out the first film through InfoWars. It's had a huge impact online. Obviously, you get the DVD with Endgame, which is Alex Jones's prophetic film about depopulation and world government, which I think is a nice little combo pack. Talk about not only the aspect of expanding this into a series, but then kind of trying not only to get everything done, but stagger them in a way that they can have the most impact. What is right now Covidland, the lockdown at Band.video? What's the view count over there?
It's right now it's over 4 million views, which is fantastic. I mean, there's no other person who could get it that high, especially with all the censorship. I mean, I went to upload this film to YouTube, and halfway through the upload, it got banned. So, I mean, I got a strike on my account just for uploading it. And so, you know, they don't want this on the mainstream platform. So, you know, it really has been a blessing to get Alex on board with this project. And, you know, I think he got on board with it just because he saw the vision. And, you know, it did turn out really fantastic. I'm really proud of this first film. I think it's by far the best film I've ever made. And, you know, if your audience hasn't seen it, make sure to go check it out. You can watch it free on Band.video. But it's definitely the best film I think I've ever made. And part 2, guys, that just is about to be done with sound here in the next, either tomorrow or the next day, I think is even better. So I'm really looking forward to seeing people's reactions. It really has been an overwhelming experience, just kind of hearing all the feedback and just positive reviews. So it's been awesome, man.
Well, I mean, the positive reviews, the proof is in the pudding. I think you did a very good job of balancing the information. I know that, you know, a lot of the people that you interviewed have different views, right? And that's also kind of the trick in this whole thing. As a documentary filmmaker, especially with my film Shade, you know, I even put a disclaimer in the very beginning because I know that they're going to hunt out every single one of these people that are in your films and try to pick them apart in their personal lives or on different issues. We saw something recently with, for instance, Richard Gage basically being ostracized and leaving architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth because Slate went after him for his opinion on COVID, right? So we see that again and again. But when you're doing these movies, you kind of have to hone in on what you feel is the most important and pertinent information in a thread of information and include those people. Talk about that. I think that you did an excellent job for the doctors, the whistleblowers, the people whose businesses were affected in this film firsthand, and threading that information.
Well, I tried to interview literally like everyone that was talking about it that I thought was a cool person. And so I got a lot of great interviews I didn't even think I'd be able to book, but they just seemed to just all happen. And, I think it's just, it's amazing to see all the different viewpoints. And, I really learned a lot going into this. When I was making the film, I thought I really knew the topic, but, through the different people I interviewed, you really see different points of view and see more information that I never would have had. So I really don't think this film would have been the way it is if I didn't interview the people that I interviewed. And, get into the fact that everyone has different views. I mean, I didn't realize like just how no one really likes each other. And these, it's weird how.
Well, you know what, behind the scenes and what he's kind of talking about is there are egos behind the scenes. People wonder why a lot of events don't happen or why it's tough for people to work with people. Because, some people kind of have a facade or there are just personal differences that kind of get in the way that you never really hear about, right? For me, I got to tell you, I like working alone, right? I like, getting in with people. Like we just had Derek Bros out here. We did the activation tour. That's great. Small projects like that are easy, but when you're butting heads with a bunch of alphas, right? There aren't a lot of betas there. It's tough, and maybe that's one of the things that we gotta have to have mea culpas on. But then there's also the paranoia aspect of it, right? This guy's a Fed, or they're an agent, or they're controlled opposition. I know you've heard that. I get that all the time, right? Someone just requested in my DMs that I come on and expose Alex Jones as controlled opposition, like all these different things. And I have to explain to people, when you see things behind the scenes, I don't throw those accusations out. And that's one of the things I minimally talk about at all, unless you're in a situation where someone's getting a ton of press like a fake Facebook whistleblower, right? That's paraded out there. Yeah, you got to call that out, right? But if you're talking about people in the alternative media all the time being bad or misdirecting, why aren't you being better and directing them at the information you want them to see? And I think that's the real solution. So kind of talk about that. How have you dealt with that? Like, have you basically relegated certain people to certain episodes because they were more effective that way in certain arenas?
Yeah. Well, when I interviewed people, I basically just I tried to do as much research as I could on them. I watched as many videos as I could. I tried to really figure out like what their strong points are. And so I just really honed in on different topics with different people, knowing that I would just show them in that particular scene of the movie. But you know what? Looking back, to think I could have made this in one film it was a little mind blowing. It would have been such a different film. It basically would have been part 5. That's what the original concept with the film was going to be.
And probably a 3-hour film too. Like that's the other thing, right? At least a 3-hour film. I think the way you did, I remember when you were going through and editing it, and I think I suggested like a 6-part series.
It's funny you brought. I think you're the one that talked me into doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you talking about it, and I was like, man, you have so many interviews here, and there's so many topics, and really, what people don't understand, and I don't think they get, is that in the last now 18 months, our entire lives, it's not just American lives, it's not just Canadian lives, not just Western lives. The entire lives of the planet have been immersed somehow in this. It's touched almost every life on the planet. So to try to do that justice in 90 minutes to 3 hours on the max just didn't seem right. What did you clock this one in at? Just around 2, right?
Yeah, so episode 1 is 94 minutes. And then episode 2 is 68 minutes. So it's a little shorter, the second episode. The original idea was to have them all just an hour long episodes, so 5-hour long episodes. but that kind of went out the window, because there's so much to talk about, and nothing's boring. Like you can talk about stuff all day long, and I don't feel like episode 1 was boring at all. I don't feel like episode 2 is boring at all. I think it's even better. And episode 3, I'm almost done editing episode 3, and that is, I mean, that's on the shot, and we know how emotional and just great information could be on there.
So you just said a couple days you think you're going to have 2 done. What is the schedule to release these? Are you going to wait another 30 days? Are you going to try to get this one out before Thanksgiving maybe?
Oh yeah, well I don't know. I'm kind of leaving it up to Alex. So I'm getting it done. I just wrote him yesterday and just gave him an update that we're gonna start making DVDs. Hopefully I'll send out the hard drives on Monday. That's the goal, is to send them out on Monday, so they should have it Tuesday, and then it'll take 10 days to get the DVDs. So hopefully he starts pre-orders here pretty soon, and we'll try to do like we did last time, 3 weeks of pre-orders, and then it goes free to everyone. Because obviously I want to make some money on this, but the goal is to educate people and wake people up. And I didn't just make this film to just kind of preach to the choir. The film, I think, really does a good job at waking up grandma, waking up mom, and just kind of laying out all the facts, and not really preaching to the choir, but just trying to change people's mind, because that's what we want to do. We want to create an awakening. We want to really get people to wake out of this slumber and take off the mask, and just get back to freedom and liberty in this country. So I hope that's what, even if we achieve a little bit through this series, I think that'd be great.
And I have to agree with you. That's a huge issue with me. It's nothing more than a mark of slavery at this point, and if you haven't recognized that, maybe you're too far gone. I mean, this whole masking issue with children, my governor banned it. We thought it was a big win. Now a federal judge steps in, and district by district, they're literally torturing children, in my opinion. I'm going to these meetings, and they're cutting the mics at 2 minutes. The parents get 2 minutes and then not addressing them. This is an authoritarian state we are now living in, and I'd love to believe that it's going to get better. I don't know if that's the case. I'm an optimist in my personal life and definitely try to be very positive, and I crack jokes here. But the direction that this has been going and is headed in, mixed in with the non-response of most people, the apathy of most people, speak to that. I mean, in your personal life, when you come across somebody who's parroting the propaganda or just super apathetic, ready to go along to get along, what do you do? Because none of us are immune from that, Paul, correct?
Right. I mean, I know in my family, it's totally split. Like, half of the family is one way, and then the other half of the family won't even talk to the other half. It's like they've done a fantastic job on pitting people against each other, and really just making this a divisive issue. And it kind of is, because people, I don't get people. And I have a hard time, man, because I'm a very pessimistic person. I really I don't even know if I agree with the end, to be honest. I don't like the ends of everyone are uplifting, like, let's change this, but it's like, is it going to change? Are people going to actually change? Because you don't see people getting motivated. You don't see people going out and protesting and standing up for their rights. It just seems like, it feels like, because at first, they were saying, you're not gonna force mandate anything, and then they changed because no one really fights back against it. They're like, okay, let's do it, because no one's really fighting back. So I just really hope and pray that people fight back against what's happening.
You know what? That's a good point for us to kind of cut off the YouTube audience. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want the rest of the interview, go make that free account at Rockfin. Support free speech. Either way, go watch the film. After you see it and you love it, go get the DVD, make copies, hand it out, hold screenings. I know that Paul just had his first theater screening. We'll talk about that on the other side. And then we're going to talk about how they're coming for your kids. And there's no doubt they're coming for your kids, and that's why we're cutting it off here. You know how to support me. The links are down below. Let's talk about that, Paul. Hey, everybody. Jason Burmis here, and you just watched a segment from the interview I did with Covidland's Paul Wittenberger. Now, you want to see the whole thing? It's a little too dicey for YouTube, so go make the free account over at Rockfin. Sign up. Follow me there. We're almost 40,000 strong. And if you do want to support the broadcast, $9.99 gets you a premium membership every month, and $99.99 gets you the full year, 2 months free. So consider sponsoring free speech. Love you guys. See you on the flip.